I spent a lot of time as a kid around arcade games. I loved being in arcades, like actual legit arcades, as much as possible, and I've talked about that a ton. Being in an arcade for me was very much like Superman going to the Fortress of Solitude, where when I was in an arcade, I couldn't be bothered by anything. I was in my element. Being surrounded by arcade games, listening to all those attract sounds, dim light, sometimes you had some rock music playing. That's where I heard Van Halen for the first time of all things. Arcades were a second home to me and so very much needed because my life outside of arcades as a kid was not great. And I'm sure it's not been great for a lot of people, but my individual stories kind of echoed by a lot of kids in the 1980s. My parents divorced when I was in second grade. I came from a single mom household who really didn't have a lot of money, so we were pretty poor. She was taking care of not one but three kids at the same time. So there were arguments at home. It was difficult sledding. And then, of course, I was a big nerd. And in the 1980s, being a nerd in school was not a cool thing. These days, you can get away with it and you're not picked on as much. But in the 1980s, if you liked video games, you liked watching video game cartoons on TV, and you were kind of awkward with sports and you were a little bit socially awkward, yeah, you were going to get picked on. Yeah, you're going to get beaten up. I've even told the story about how I was thrown into a locker in ninth grade. I mean, I was not very popular in high school because I was a big nerd. So the place for me to get away from all of that stuff, the family crap and the school crap and the social crap, was in an arcade. And unfortunately, arcades weren't always at my beck and call. I wasn't always able to go to the mall when I wanted. I was a kid. I didn't have a car, and a lot of arcades were not within walking distance from where I lived. So I had to take what I could get. I've talked about going to a pool hall when I was in 3rd and 7th and 8th grade in Holyoke, Mass., where I played like Mr. Do and Donkey Kong Jr. in pole position. So I spent time there. I spent time at like 7-Eleven near where I used to live. They had a couple of arcade games in there. I spent time at a bowling alley, a few different bowling alleys, in fact, and there were arcade games in there. And I spent a lot of time in convenience stores. And back in the 80s and through like the early 90s, arcade games in convenience stores, as long as the city or town that the store was located in allowed it, had arcade games. Not necessarily a lot. I was lucky near where I lived in Greenfield, Mass. When I was going to high school from like 86 to 90. The convenience store that I went to called Call's Corner had an addition built that had just arcade games in it. I talked about that a lot when I used to do some streaming over the last couple of years. But Robotron 2084 was a game that maybe I had seen in arcades, but my first memory of it really comes from seeing it in a convenience store. It was set up next to a Defender machine, so there were two arcade machines, and the convenience store was actually downstairs from the apartment that my mom and my brother and sister and I were staying in. So I went downstairs one day to get like some milk or something for my mom, and I saw these two games there, and I watched someone play Robotron, and they were pretty good. And what struck me was just all the crazy stuff that was going on. If you haven't played Robotron 2084 before, it is you against like a ton of different robots and enemies, and all you're armed with is a gun. You have to kind of rotate around the arena and picking them off while you're trying to rescue as many human characters as possible. It is tougher than it sounds, even though these twin-stick shooter types are more commonplace, especially in the indie game space these days. But back then, it was a new concept, and I really liked the concept. I played it once. I lasted maybe 40 seconds, and I said, nope, I'm good, and I stopped playing. You have to understand that my allowance, the amount of money that I had every week to spend, which was primarily on gaming, was between $1 to $2. Usually it was $1, sometimes it was $2 if I was lucky. So I only had between 4 to 8 quarters to spend a week, and really, half of that was going to be going toward like junk food and candy. I've always had a bit of a sweet tooth. And the other half would go toward arcade games. So I had 4 quarters. I had to make them last. They were not going to last if I was putting them in a Robotron 2084 or Defender. So I didn't play the video games at this convenience store. I just went downstairs and would watch them play. Robotron 2084 would later see like an emulated release for the PlayStation and I believe the Saturn and I think the I don't remember whether it came out for the Super Nintendo and the Genesis. I don't think, but I could be wrong. But I had the PlayStation version of Arcade's Greatest Hits, which had Robotron on there, and I was just, at that point, much like Galaga and Galaxian and some of the Namco games that I played on Namco Museum, that's where I sharpened my skills, because now I could play free. It was free play, no quarters required once I bought the game, and I wound up getting better over time. Now, I am no Robotron expert at all. I'm lucky if I can get to like the 6th or 7th stage in the game without upping the lives to start, at least. But it is still a lot of fun to play, and I have gotten a little bit better over time to where I'm on the high end of novice, low end of maybe respectable when it comes to Robotron 2084. Now, during the PlayStation era, during the PlayStation Saturn era, but especially for the PlayStation and I guess the N64 too, a lot of arcade franchises or video game franchises from the 1980s started to reappear and be remade for the 3D era. We saw this happen with Asteroids and with Missile Command and with Qbert. Those are with Pong, Breakout. We saw these games kind of come to life in new ways in 3D. Robotron also got the 3D treatment, and that is the topic, now finally 6 minutes in, the topic of this week's episode of Unsealed, is I have a sealed copy of Robotron X for the PlayStation from 1996. That's right, this game turns 25 years old a little bit later this year. I'm not going to wait for that date. I'm going to open this up because I want to play it. I played it briefly when I was working for Funcoland in 1998 and 1999, but I never really owned it and never really spent a lot of time playing it. So now this gives me a reason to go ahead and give it some attention. So again, this is Robotron X. I believe there was a Nintendo 64 version of this called Robotron 64. I believe they're very similar, but don't quote me on that because I don't have a lot of recent experience with either to be able to make that comparison. But this is a 3D reimagining of Robotron 2084 from Eugene Jarvis and company. Save humanity! That's what we're seeing there for the tagline on the back of the case. You can see some of the screens, although I know that I have some glare in here because of lights. Let's take a look and see what it says on the back. It says, in 2084. So again, another clue that this is very much based on Robotron 2084. Mankind perfects the Robotrons, a robot species so advanced that humans are inferior to their own creation. Guided by their infallible logic, the Robotrons conclude the human race is efficient and therefore must be destroyed. Start moving, because you are the last hope for mankind. Tons of lightning-fast destructive levels, plus bonus levels too. All the original characters, plus new ones, each rendered in eye-popping 3D. 3D environment or overhead view for optimal gameplay. Non-stop adrenaline-pumping techno music and original sound effects. Sounds kind of like the reimagining of Tempest, which we've seen time and again. All the excitement and speed of the original classic, now updated with state-of-the-art graphics. Pick a specialty weapon and increase your odds versus the Robotrons. So that's what we have here. We're going to go ahead and open this up. This, by the way, is published by Midway Games. Do want to send a shout out to Insert Coin, the documentary, which is now available on many different streaming and video platform services. And I believe that the Blu-ray is also available for pre-order. I think actually they're filling those now where you can buy the Blu-ray. I have my Blu-ray and my special Insert Coin pin coming in the mail hopefully very soon. I'm looking forward to getting that. This shirt that goes with it. Salute to my buddy Josh. Congratulations again on the project. Now, with that aside, now that I've mentioned that, because it is Midway Monday here, we're going to go ahead and open this game and we're going to see what it is about, what we've got for an instruction manual. I hope, anyway. These PlayStation games tend to be pretty tricky when it comes to getting the plastic off. I don't know why I always struggle with these. I really should start them before I get on camera here so that I don't struggle as much. All right, let's do this. That's not going to work either. All right, got to take the trusty scissors out here and see if we can kind of open this up a little bit. There we go. Aha! Success. All right. I am excited about this one. I haven't had a lot of time to play of late. But I have a PS1 right here next to me, so I think after this video is recorded, while I am uploading it, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pop this in and try it. We do have the ID seal, by the way, Robotron X right there at the top, so we're going to take this off, and we're going to see what is on the inside. I have a lot more coming, by the way, in future weeks for Unsealed. I have a lot more sports games, so you're going to see the Retro Referee make an appearance, including an opening of a couple of WCW games that are not so good for the PlayStation. We'll be doing those soon. When we open the case, because this is the important part. Ah, cool. When we open the case, we do see the red X marks the spot, Robotron X, and we do have the instruction manual that we'll take out. There isn't any advertising on the back of the manual. It is just straight dark in the back there. The manual is in black and white. It is not in color, but again, considering that this is based on an arcade game from the 1980s, I'll take it. So you're using just digital controls. Remember, in 1996, we did not have the dual analog sticks just yet. So you're going to be using the digital controls instead, where you're going to be using the D-pad to walk, and I believe you're going to use the, let's see, Robotron lets you play both using the controller directional buttons to move and shoot. That's interesting. I have to, two-handed? Two-handed? That's weird. Okay, I'm going to have to look at this a little bit later. So we have the Robotron X story here. We talked about that. This is the same thing that was on the back of the case. We have the main menu here, 1 player, 2 players, load game and options. We also have just more options in the game here as well. Starting lives, you can adjust from 1 to 10. That's nice. I'll probably start at like 5 when I play. Extra life score. To make things even easier or harder, you can adjust the amount of points it takes to win an extra life. 10,000, 25,000, 50,000, or 100,000 points, or never if you just don't want any extra lives at all, if you're a glutton for punishment. Good luck with that. Configuring controls. Oh, and you can use, let's see, So default controls, change the configuration, highlight this option, press the directional button left or right to cycle between standard and two-fisted. Okay, so you can use standard controls, but you can also use both controllers if you want to play two-handed. I wouldn't recommend that. I don't think you really need to do that. I think you can use just the D-pad and the buttons, much like Super Smash TV for the Super Nintendo. So that's what the arena looks like, and I know it's tough to see because it's in black and white, but it is definitely like that 3D look, almost like a little bit closer view than the arcade game had. There are level gates. It's interesting. Level gates are created when a magical grunt is destroyed. If entered, a level gate will randomly warp the player forward or back through levels, either -1, -3, 0, +1, or +5. Level gates do not appear in the last 10 levels. That's interesting. We also have different electrodes here. I don't know what those do. We'll have to figure that out. Again, I have not played this in a long time, so my memories of the game are very vague. So I'm guessing that the electrodes are like power-ups. I wish they would just call them that. But that's what the electrodes look like there. We have our warranty information. Midway Home Entertainment out of Corsicana, Texas, where you could send your warranty card in. And we've talked about the warranty registrations before. Nothing really notable here. 2 reasons to send in your warranty card: technical support, and sending in the card also entitles you to free information about updates, new products, and free offers. They're not even offering to give you like free games or anything. But still, I would have sent it in just because I wanted cool stuff in the mail. Oh, there are your power-ups. So there are electrodes and then there are power-ups. Shield, 2-way, and 3-way. So you got those right there too. More power-ups. So this already is like modernizing the game, which could be interesting or not, depending on what your experience is. In-game options, shows you the different enemies, and they are very much based on the original enemies from Robotron 2084, which certainly makes sense. And what else do we have? Is that it? That's pretty much it. And then the Midway Home team. Midway Home Entertainment team. Special thanks to Eugene Jarvis. Thumbs up to Eugene Jarvis. Such a creative, important mind. Now working, I believe, with Roth Thrills, which is his arcade company. He still does a fantastic job. Still bringing it after all these years. Player One team. I'm guessing the Player One team is behind this particular version of the game. Interesting note here, also special thanks to John Rowe for pushing the start button. I'm guessing he's the guy that greenlit the project. So that's what we've got. We've got Robotron X here, which is, again, 25 years old. We're looking at 25 years ago being 1996. So a lot of cool stuff celebrating a 25th anniversary this year, including the N64, which turns 25 here in the US at least in September. So that's it for this episode of Unsealed. Again, thank you very much to everyone who takes the time to watch these videos. I really do appreciate it. Please take care of yourselves and each other. Stay safe, and we'll do it again soon. Until then, see ya.